always, watched it virtually, but never got the chance to come in person. And I actually took the chance and applied to speak here. And I was invited to be part of the panel discussion today. So it was really amazing to actually come here to experience all of this. I think GitHub Universe does have this very casual feel to it, and presenting on the main stage, there's definitely this I'm just talking to developers about this cool thing that I get to work on every day. It's a very different conference feeling than a lot of other places I've presented.
It's a super welcoming conference and really has a community feel to it, which is amazing.
I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to actually speak here at GitHub Universe. So having went through the keynotes, it was an exciting keynote. And I also delivered my session, so I'm looking forward to exploring what the new sessions are going to deliver and what things I can learn.
As a speakers, we are really impressed by the coaching, the content. Whole organization.
I've spoken at many conferences at this point, and most of them are more corporate-driven and quite a bit larger and quite a bit just louder, frankly. But here, I've made friends with many people. Everyone feels approachable, and I feel approachable too, and I've really enjoyed that experience so far.
Hello, and welcome to Open Source Friday, the show where we talk to maintainers about the projects that they are maintaining. I'm Kedasha, and I'm so happy that you're able to join me today. Super, super excited for today's episode. We'll be chit-chatting with Brian, or B. Dougie, a GitHub veteran. He now owns and maintains his own projects and product, OpenSauced. And I am super, super excited to see all the changes and updates and everything that he has going on at OpenSauced. Welcome to the stream, everyone. Thank you for joining. That little blurb of video you saw was about GitHub Universe, and GitHub Universe call for sessions are open, and they're open until May 10th. Be sure to apply if you have a session on AI, security, or developer experience. It's definitely for you. Check out our website at githubuniverse.com to get information about how to apply. Now, let's get into this episode. I'm going to bring up Brian on the stage. Hey, Brian.
Hey, how you doing? Pleasure.
Good, good. How are you?
I am doing well. On Friday, got my coffee. Just went for a walk to also get another coffee. So I'm double coffee today.
Nice, nice. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super, super happy that you were able to jump in on this episode, and happy to see you. So, are you still in California? How has it been?
Yeah, I am actually. I'm Oakland, California. Just out here in the Bay Area, across the bridge from San Francisco, about 7 minutes from the GitHub office. So, still hanging out and living the dream.
Nice. We love to see it. So let's just jump right into the episode, right? So tell us about Brian. How did you get into open source? What has your journey been like? I know you've been on a few streams and you've done a few talks, but just in case someone doesn't know who you are, tell us who is Brian? Who is B. Dougie?
Yeah, B. Dougie. Yeah, so I got into this actually. I have a finance degree, and I graduated in 2008 with no opportunity to get a job. So parlayed that into a sales career, learned how to code while doing sales. That's a longer story, but thank you, Excel macros. And open source, my journey really started because I wanted to build a web app. And that web app specifically, I Googled how do you build this project, or how do you do, actually it was how do you do an iOS app? And then I ended up stumbling into Ruby on Rails, which is kind of distant from iOS, but built an app through just Googling and open source and documentation. And once I found out that you could really unlock the ability to do stuff in code just by using things like GitHub and NPM, it unlocked a ton for me. So so what I'm getting at it here is open source really started because I wanted to learn and build something.
Nice, nice. I love that. And wanting to build is such a great motivator to figuring things out and actually getting things done, I've realized. Because sometimes I'm just oh, I really want to build something. But because there's no underlying drive, you know what I mean? I'm just like, oh, I'll
Yeah.
do it later. Let me just get back to my regular activities. All right, so tell us about OpenSauce, right? Like, what inspired you to start OpenSauce, and how did you come up with the name OpenSauced?
Yeah, so the name OpenSauce.pizza really came because I was actually maintaining a bunch of open source contributions in a couple projects back in 2017, and I had a bunch of PRs in random projects, and I needed like one place to see where all my PRs were. And what the beauty of GitHub is like there's an API, and at the time, GitHub's GraphQL API had just recently launched publicly, so I wanted like to test that out, use that like on a public project. And that was like the same year .pizza came out. So I
Oh,
was trying to think
nice.
of clever puns for a pizza domain, and open sauce was the pun. I thought it was a funny open source collaboration platform. So that's where it all got started. I spent almost 5 years working at GitHub, 2018 to 2022. So left about 20 months ago. And the entire time it had this like project on the side that I used and I would live stream and show folks about. And then I saw an opportunity to provide like deeper insights into what's happening into open source code bases. And that's what really got me the excitement to peel off of GitHub and try this thing full time. So today, OpenSauce it's open sourced. All of our dashboards, Next.js. We've got a Nest API. We have a CLI that's built in Go. And then we have like, there's two things that are still private because it's pretty messy code and we quite haven't figured out like how do we make it shareable. But the way we sort of source the data from the GitHub events feed, that's a pizza time service. And all that is what you see today on the OpenSauce platform. So the idea is like, if you're looking for projects, maybe you want recommendations on projects to contribute to or explore, we solved that for last year. That's what we built. And then now if you maintain lots of open source, we have a platform for you to see across organizations on projects you maintain, but also projects that are related to what you maintain.
Interesting. So like that was a really good overall explanation, but give me like a sound bite for like someone who is just like, okay, but what is open source? Like, what
Yeah.
is the purpose of open source? Like, what would you say to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's like the thing that continues to shift a bit. So if you asked me to 6 months ago, which we're still doing this, it's Moneyball for engineers. So like
Okay.
see specific stats and metrics to identify, hey, am I active in a community? Like who are the stakeholders? Who's the core contributors? That's what we kind of been focusing on as of recent. But we recently built something with AI calling Star Search. I could show a demo later. But that is Copilot for your Git history. So the idea, yes, you can generate code. Yes, you can chat with your repos with Copilot Chat. But like, what if you can get more context on the folks who've like built this project? So like, this might have been around for 10 years. Kubernetes, for example, 10 years in July. What if you can get that story generated to you and like tell that of like who built XYZ in the Kubernetes ecosystem? And that's
so it's kind of giving the builders that what is it, like a highlight of the work that they did in the project.
Yeah. So like the soundbite is IMDb for developers. That's
okay.
the thing I don't say out loud all the time because I feel like that's a misnomer. But the International Movie Database, like I'm watching a movie and I'm like, oh, who's that person? What have they done? What do I know them from? Think of that for developers. Like I was just in React Miami last week, and so many folks in the React ecosystem, because I've been doing this React for about 9 years. Like I know all these folks and I know exactly what they've done. And if you ask me, hey, what has this person worked on? Or what's that person worked on? I'd be like, oh, I can tell you because I lived it. But like, what if you're just starting React last week? Like, how do you get that lived experience and like represent that in alongside of your code base? So that's what OpenSauce is moving towards. And like, we're looking forward to having a public launch on this in May.
Nice. That is actually pretty cool and a really good explanation for someone who has no idea what OpenSauce is. And I do love the idea of giving developers that front and center highlight is the word that keeps popping in my head because I'm not thinking of the correct word, but like the IMDb for developers is a really good way of like surmising what you're trying to do and like where you're heading. So I guess like let's see the platform, like a nice walkthrough of like for those who don't know OpenSauce, never used it, and also like all the enhancements you've been doing to OpenSauce. I'm really keen to see it.
Yeah. So like I pulled up my profile first. Like this is, you can see there's a little bit of a missing. I'm not doing a lot of contributions in the last couple weeks. I was in Miami recently. But like to be able to see all my contributions across the organization in one place, this exists on GitHub, and it only exists really on your personal profile or in the API. And we wanted like an easier way to identify, okay, what have I done the last 30, 60, 90, 180 days, and show that in a clear dashboard. So that's what my profile looks like. Really, this was kind of a means to an end, like where we had a bunch of contributions that we wanted to showcase. So like these are all Go, like recently contributed to Go projects. So if you go to the Explore tab, I can go to, I was just talking about React. This might take a second because of caching that we're working on. But the idea is that you can see all the React contributions in one place and also see all activity in one place too as well. So I might go back to Golang since that was actually pre-cached.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of data too as well. So what I'm getting at is like, I want to get involved in Go. I don't know where to start. How could I get an idea of like what to explore that's actively like happening in the Go ecosystem? So that's what this is. Actually, I'll punt real quick and move over into like a dashboard where if I already know what I'm looking for, so these are all React projects. And the way this works is I can create what we call workspaces. So on GitHub, you have a repo, and then you have an organization. But like, what about across organizations? And in the context of OpenSauced, we call those workspaces. So like all React projects that I want to be paying attention to, we got like Material UI, Next.js, Storybook, Redwood. I can add repositories. So if there's something that's missing, and for the sake of folks who are in chat, I love for folks to drop in projects that we can also look at as well, because we got some other stuff I'd love to show you. So if there's any open source repos that you want to see in the context of OpenSauced insights, I can pull it up and we can show it. But I'm trying to think of like what is a good React project, and I'm gonna just basically say Vercel SWR, and I'll add that here. And the beauty of this is like I have not just Vercel organization project, I got Redwood, and they're all across the board. So this is my workspace, and my workspace will then give me the opportunity to see that data. And cool, we got ZD, OpenZD. I've never heard of that.
I know, I've never heard of that.
And then what's cool about this is that you could not only to get like a workspace to see all the engagement and issues and like what that level of activity looks like. We do have an activities tab, which just shows PRs that are open at the time. If I wanted to like break down and see just React activity, you could see that.
Nice.
React has announced their beta for React 19. The idea there is like, you can now see who's working on React actively today. So a lot of this is work that would take multiple tabs on GitHub or a lot of conversations with the core team or digging through discussions. We're just providing a better way to look at that. Some other stuff I'm going to ramble through, but this is basically the demo I gave last week for the React conference. What I wanted to know, because there's been a lot of changes in the React core team, is like who is on the React core team. So like these are the most recent contributors to the React core project. So we got like Jack Pope, who is working at Meta, Joseph working at Meta, but then you have Andrew, who's working at Vercel. You got Noah, who actually I don't know who Noah is, but I could see like the level of contribution. So like Seb, he specifically is working on multiple React projects, which you can see right here on one screen. And what's interesting about this is like Seb's not working at Facebook or Meta; he's working at Vercel. So like you get a nice representation of his full open source contributions in one place. And what's beautiful about this is I've also taken this list and put it into a stack rank list of like types of contributions folks are doing. So like comments and created issues and reviewed PRs. So you can see Seb's doing a bunch, but you also see Dan's doing quite a bit as well, which is interesting because last week Rick was actually number 2 in contributions within the React ecosystem. And now you see Dan's doing some stuff recently. So like ideally I'd go to Dan's profile and then find out what he's working on, what's active, what needs to be reviewed. So that's the context. We could also see a tree map of contributions for this list of individuals, these 19 contributors. And then you'll probably end up finding Dan is working on Blue Sky. So you see a lot of his contributions here. And this is so far, like these are a lot of the updates we've done since the last time I was on Open Source Friday. And yeah, I'll pause for effect or for questions, or you let me know what next.
No. That's awesome. It also makes me understand more about OpenSauce and like what it does. So like I was having a difficult, before now, I was having a hard time being like, okay, what is the platform? What do I do? But now I see it. I'm just like, okay, it's giving these contributors a place to show off their contributions and to even like add it to your resume, use it to find jobs, to, you know, kind of like validate the experience and the tools and the tech that you say you know how to use, right? Because you're using it in the open source world. And that's even a really good way to not just like give back to the community, but also like find work, like contributing to open source. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's a conversation that had recently about like whether or not you should use open source to find your next role or your first job or whatnot. And I take it in like a lot of times it's hard to showcase like what you're doing, and hard to justify. So I think there's been a lot of shift, especially in DevRel and community right now, where you can't really justify the work you're doing because a lot of it's hand wavy, a lot of it's really like deep in the comments on GitHub PRR, or a lot of contributions that don't happen within your organization. How do you showcase that skill or that work you're doing? And the idea here is like we have this tool which is called Highlights, and Highlight is quite similar. Like, and this is something when I was at GitHub, we were really trying to push towards having like a highlight feed where you could showcase your contributions in a way that like makes a lot of sense. So like. Here I could do a highlight on a recent PR. So these are issues. I've only really done issues and then a bunch of release. But I created a PR where I just added a robot TXT file. So the idea there is like I could use this little add summarize, and we're using OpenAI summarize. Someone have to tell me what the summarize model is, but
okay.
We could summarize a description for your highlight. But for now, I'll just say like, I added robots. And what we're doing right now is we're tagging a repo, and just like a tweet or a post, I can now do a highlight in particular on a feed alongside other folks. So like we've got Zayu who did a pull request on adding some dev stats to our project. We've got a blog post that someone wants to do a highlight for this intro course. But then we have some other folks who've done contributions to Forum, which is a Dev2 platform. We've got some Create React app or some Hedera stuff here. But the idea is like we're able to show highlights across our community of where folks have made contributions, and a feed that if you're looking for places to make contributions, like this is a good place to start. Because ideally, if like the Bumble, I'm not sure what happened over the Bumble stuff, but like if Bumble's here and you're seeing highlights for these projects, chances are I can reach out to Ken and say, hey, I saw you made a contribution. Would you like to pair on something else in the future? Let's work together. So that's there's the highlights feature. And I think we walked through the workspace. I showed off the Explore page, which was sadly a little bit dead, but now it's back for us.
That's okay. We did have a few. Let's see. Somebody said Zeke.
Yeah, so not familiar with Zeke. You'll have to let me know if this is a
Zeek. Did you say Z or Z?
Z is what we say here in the States, but yeah.
In Jamaica,
Zed
we say
is
Zed.
what they're saying, yeah, on the island, yeah, for sure. So I think I might have picked it up. So we have another feature, which these are like repository pages. And what we wanted to do is provide that same sort of insight into like what we do with user profiles, but for repositories in particular. So it did take a little bit of a second there, but so Zeek is so this is pulling directly from GitHub, and we're just organizing the data in a way that provides some insights on what's happening in the project. So today we show stars and forks alongside of each other. And the reason for this is like in isolation, stars don't really make a lot of sense to pay.
Yeah.
But when you look at like the escalation of forks, so if you look at like the history of forks, you can kind of see the same trend and it seems like Zeek is it might actually be a rather new project. I'm not sure how long it's been around, but probably seems to be less than 12 months. So like not a lot of data to look at right now for Zeek in particular. But when I was looking at Makeplane, and I'm just opened up the command palette with Command K and then searching for a repository. You do the same thing for users as well. And the caveat is like most users haven't signed up for OpenSauced, so we only have a limited amount of data we can show for them without their permission. So anything public, like we show, but we'll need folks to actually log in to provide more context around there. But it looks like we got a nice little function crash. So shout out to demos. But the thing I was going to show is if they go back to 1 year for Makeplane's a alternative to Jira that's open source. They have had a few star events. So right off the bat, you could see back in May 31st, a huge peak of stars. And this, I know this project, and this project basically was on Hacker News. That's why they had a huge peak. So if you want to get a lot of stars, go to get on Hacker News. But what's interesting about them is you can actually see all these peaks and forks. They kind of really correlate together. So then the question I would ask this project and this maintainer is like, okay, what are these events? Are these all Hacker News experiences? Or are these releases? Are these blog posts? But then what's interesting about this is like where we're sort of heading with OpenSauced is like, I would love to find out how many of these forks made features in the project. So folks, feel free to like ask more questions, but this is kind of like the edge and the end of the demo. And I mentioned Star Search as the place to land. I would love to find out, okay, of all the forks that are out in the projects that have been forked from here, like what features are still out and never made to the main branch, or what companies represent the people forking and starring. Like, is there an opportunity for partnership and for sponsorship? But there was actually a tweet that happened pretty recently, and I'm going to stop my screen share and grab my slides real quick because there's a tweet that I wanted to share that was. So I'm going to like scream through my slides. So I got it pulled up if you want to pull up this tweet. But so Adam tweeted out he's hiring for a React developer. A Rust developer who knows Tailwind. So Adam created Tailwind with his co-founder or co-maintainer. Like there's a business with Tailwind, so it's maintainer, founder, boss. And the amount of applications that had the skill set they were looking for was actually pretty shockingly low. So what we did internally, like we saw this tweet and we're like, oh, it'd be cool if we built something that we could look into GitHub data and find someone who has this persona. Ideally, this is an open source project. So some people who don't mind working in open source already do open source. So let's just ask the question of like Tailwind developers that specifically know Rust or are interested in Rust. And this is actually, so I could do this live, but I also have a screenshot of the same answer I'll get if I do it live. But what's interesting about this, you get specifically GitHub users that fall within this persona. Shout out to Dependabot. So we do have to like obscure bots from this, but ideally you'll get the list of folks who fall within this persona that you can reach out to for contract opportunity and etc. So yeah, that's what Star Search is today. Nice. And right now it's we have a wait list. So if you go to if you click on the Star Search link, we're going to add people to the wait list, and then the next week or so we're start adding people to give us feedback. So the promise is you give us feedback, we'll give you access.
Nice. And so this it's searching your current user base, right? Not like searching GitHub.
No, it's searching not GitHub in particular. It's searching GitHub events. So what we've done is we've gone through the GitHub event feeds. So most folks who have worked with GitHub's event feed know GitHub Archive. So very similar to the archive. And then we just go and source through responses and answers. And so it's folks who have done PRs in Tailwind or have touched Tailwind, but also do Rust. We can now do a semantic search for that.
That's pretty cool. I really like that feature. It's like, it's so useful. And it's surprising. It's honestly not very surprising that he wasn't able to find someone interested in Tailwind and Rust. I know there's been like a lot of fanfare about Rust, but like, do you think a lot of developers know Rust, and those that do know Rust would know Tailwind? As that seems
Yeah,
like a very
so
niche
and
skill
that's
set.
it is niche today, but for
Yeah.
folks, what I will call out is like the majority of the folks that show up on the list are from Vercel or Cloudflare.
Ah, okay.
So Vercel and Cloudflare have a very
Interesting.
strong Rust engineering culture, and they're also very front end focused. So that's where the overlap really comes from. If like you
Makes
work in somewhere
sense.
in like a React ecosystem, but you are really into performance or a developer performance and experience. So like that's really where like the summarize like how you can find folks. But as an outsider or somebody who's not in the scene day to day, like Adam is, like he has a job and he's running a company, he might not have that context. So
Yeah. Cool. All right. So we have some questions. That's a really good point. That he might not have that context, and then Cloudflare and Vercel are like heavy Rust users, so they would have like the Rust Tailwind combo in their devs. That's really interesting. Really interesting stuff. I love that it's able to search GitHub events and just say, "Hey, here are some folks you may want to consider," and like reach out to. You know what I mean? Okay.
yeah.
One question Sila had is there room for QAs or automations to contribute on this platform?
Yeah, I mean, as we speak, we are actually doing a bunch of end-to-end testing. So shout out to Nikki T online. Kind of testing and trying to figure out some like we saw some bugs automatically when I was trying to do a demo. So we've been trying to fix some performance things. So a lot of stuff happens like because we're sourcing so much data, things will time out and things break all the time. So we've had previously we had a triage team. This is like an official team at OpenSauced. These are all community contributors, and they would help review PRs at the time of PR. We've actually pivoted that team into now it's Discord focused. Still a triage team, but instead in Discord, we're calling them the insiders. And folks will get early access to things like Star Search and give us QA and testing and insight on that. So it's a community role. We do sponsor some contributors and folks in the ecosystem who've been around for a bit, but we're always happy to find you in the Discord.
Nice. And I see a question here about using. So this person says they've been looking for a way to put together their entire GitHub portfolio for companies to understand their backgrounds. And they're like, how can this tool help me to share what, I'm trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I would say like, I showed off how the profiles, and the opportunity there is like leverage OpenSauced to basically get all the data in one spot. We're actually open for any suggestions on if you wanted to, like if you have any ideas on how we present this, the very natural step, and this is finally we have the data actually show. So like these are all contributions in Go in the last 30 days. But what I wanted to show is in particular, going back to my profile, automatically, if you've done any open source contributions, you can put that in your profile just by logging in. But if your contributions don't show up, or maybe they're outside our time frame, creating highlights is a great way to add to your resume. So the next step that we'll be working on, hopefully later in the summer, is how do you generate a portfolio resume from the contributions you made publicly? Because everyone's got a story of how they've done open source or how they made contributions or the work they've done. And the thing I've always been like, it's always been painful because like most people, once the thing's merged or once the PR is merged, the story ends. And what we're trying to emphasize is like the story doesn't end after it's merged. So like what's the journey in the story you could tell of like, yes, I was part of this project, or I fixed a bug, or I fixed a thing. Like there's an opportunity for you to share that. So again, we have a Discord, discord.gg/OpenSauced. We have everything we're doing is open source as well. So we drop in github.com/OpenSauced/app. That in particular, if you have an issue or have an idea, open up a discussion, open up issue, and like we can figure out whatever, how to help share your story.
Nice. And we have a question specific to Star Search. So will Star Search have any sort of limitations on star counts? And does one need to upload their GitHub token at all?
So we don't upload token. We do authenticate. So I saw Clint rather, who's asking a question, ask again about authentication for organizations.
Yeah.
This is like, we asked that because we want to be able to see what orgs you're in. We don't actually see anything that's private. We only see org public data. So that is kind of confusing on GitHub Awkworks. So it's a two-parter question. But for the waitlist, we do need you to opt into GitHub because that's our only authentication solution today. So if you're willing to do that, then you can get on the waitlist. For the organizational access, like that's specifically because this is built for teams. And the opportunity there is like we can preemptively start ingesting public data to provide that data for you in your dashboard.
Nice. And can the star search go back more than a year?
So today, because we're only testing it, we've actually we built Star Search 10 days ago. So the current data set is actually so the current data set is anything over 1,000 stars in the last 30 days. So all repos are over, so it's about 43,000 repos. We will go back to a year by launch. So we do have a planned launch at the end of May. So we will go back to at least 12 months. Or our data defaults on all the platform 12 months. We're still trying to figure out like what the need is past 12 months. And at that point, we'll probably have to introduce like a paid offering or paid plan because it is a lot of data.
Of course.
But for now, 12 months is the goal. Anything past 12 months is probably let's organize like how do we get this performant and ready for you if you need like 10 years of data.
Yeah. And do you think you'd ever consider training like your own custom model to do this, or would you keep using like OpenAI Summarizer?
Yeah, so we're actually not using OpenAI anymore. We did that the first weekend. We moved on to the open source Mixtral summarizers, like Mixtral 7B. And that's really for cost reasons. Like we could do better by hosting on Kubernetes. And the reason for that is like, if you go back 10 years, it's 7 terabytes of data. So if you go back 12 months, it's about 1.5 terabytes of data. So what I'm getting at is like immediately, like we already have data. And I think that's usually the biggest issue for any new ML or AI projects. You got to go source data. So like we already check that box. So what we build is a RAG to basically go source data. We've already identified like what we need from the model and how to like source data in the way we're asking questions for it. And then we're just like throwing a bunch of stuff through that same model. So the Mixtral Summarizer, specifically, like we're adding a column or a column on the table that has a summary of the PR and the users and the repos to then retrieve, augmented retrieve generation, whatever RAG stands for. But we're retrieving that to then, so then basically say, okay, these are the Rust developers that know Tailwind. So that's currently how it's set up today. Again, like this is pretty new for us. And this is a pretty rough demo for us too as well, because like we've only shown this to a handful of folks so far.
Yeah, I think it's cool though, and I think this is like a really good use case for AI as well. Like, like tell me what engineers on GitHub or like within GitHub events, the ones who are there, qualifies for this particular role. Like, I think that's such a good use case. And it's such a great way to get contributors in the spotlight for jobs.
Yeah, and it's even like the job thing is like pretty clear, cut and dry. It's like, I can hire based on folks who are out in the open doing things. But it's even like when we ship GitHub Actions internally at GitHub, we needed folks who knew Rust and Go and Python to also ship Actions. So like put aside hiring, but just like, how do you find experts? How do you find folks with influence within open source roadmaps? And then the other thing is like, we have all these FOSS funds at the enterprise level. How do you know who to donate money to? So he asked a question like, I know the project is what I want to donate to, but I don't know if I should donate to the organization or if there's like somebody who has a lot of influence and pull and contribution, like heft, to be able to, do I sponsor those people? And like, those are questions we want to be able to answer within the context of Star Search.
I like that. It's like really digging into the open source-ness of open source projects, essentially. Okay, so we have a question here. I wonder how this can help newer engineers figure out a popular niche or language that lacks dev. And along the same line, Bashir says that he really wants to get into open source this year. So like, how can OpenSauced help newer engineers get into open source and figure out all that stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as far as like identifying trends in data, so I was actually, I don't think I have that slide here, but what we did is we went through all the data we sort of sourced in the last 6 months, and we discovered we call internally like the activity and engagement ratio. And what I mean by this is like Kubernetes, if you like not normalize data, but if you take all issue comments, all PRs, and take like also unique authors, you get a number which is close to 400. But if you take like view, you get a number close to 30. But if you take and I'm actually going to open up this slide because I just gave this talk quite recently. Sorry, I'm like all over the place with like what I'm sharing, but
No, you're fine.
Should have just shared my entire desktop. That would have been pretty messy.
There you go.
But this is a term in statistics called a rate of self-selection. So these are like contributions that come outside the core team. So what I'm getting, like what you're looking at here is like Kubernetes, very few folks outside the org will make a contribution. So it's 0.004. But if you look at TypeScript, and this is all based on September to December, so only Q4. So like this could be different today. It's 0. So 0% of people who make contributions to TypeScript were not a Microsoft employee or part of the org. But if you look at Next.js is 0.02. So what is normal? Like it doesn't matter what normal is, but like if you have a baseline of I can make a contribution to Supabase or DuckDB, it's a way more approachable to make a contribution to Kubernetes or TypeScript. But on that in the same vein, we've got this other thing, which is like adoption. So like Kubernetes is a 400 because you have high adoption, folks using a project. But then you have Tiger Beetle, which is it's a niche because it's written in a language called Zig. And Zig is brand new in the last couple of years. So you have less Zig developers. So if you're looking for trends of like, where should I put my investment of time? So if I'm going to read a book or do some nights and weekends or write a blog post, you will probably get noticed way faster if you do a Zig blog post today because there's less Zig stuff out there. But if you do a Kubernetes thing, you'll be lost in the sauce. So again, like these numbers are, and like, we're not going to expose these numbers in the platform because I feel like this will just it'd be more of like a race to the bottom or the top or whatever. But we're going to normalize this out of a 10 out of 10 score, identify trends. Because I believe that I'm doing a lot of statistics and a lot of SQL queries in the last like 3 months. I got a C in statistics in college. So I'm not an expert. But what I want to do with this data is like, how do you identify trends of things that you should be paying attention to? And that's what our platform will lean into in the next couple of months. So the answer to the question of like, will this platform help? Yes. Like we will start showing up and coming things that you should pay attention to. Within our platform, you go to your profile, we have recommendations based on your interests. So if you're interested in certain languages and frameworks, we'll recommend projects that need help. And that's the goal. I forgot the second question though.
The second question was essentially it was like, how can OpenSauced help them to get started in open source?
Got it. Yeah. And that's the one thing that we have this other tool called hot OpenSauced.pizza. Hot
What is
OpenSauced
that?
Yeah. Well, let me go back to specifically my web browser because I'll show this off because this was actually the thing that got me interested in like exploring like life outside of GitHub. And we built this in Astro. And I just wanted to basically just find out what are trending projects based on new repos. So like today we're only showing anything that has a high influx of stars in one day. So I don't know what Apple CoreNet is, but apparently Apple CoreNet is a thing that we can pay attention to. And what I'm getting at is like the projects that need the most help are usually the brand new projects, the projects that came out of nowhere, have no structure, have no governance. It needs documentation, it needs examples. But where open source is, like most people focus on established projects like React or Angular. And you try to make a contribution there, but they won't pay attention to you because they already have governance and structure and a company backing. So like I would recommend like going to CoreNet because I'm not even sure what this is, to be quite honest. Training deep neural networks, like seems pretty new. It's very interesting. And Apple's getting in the ML space, or rather the AI space, and they're going to announce stuff soon. I think WWDC is June, coming up pretty soon. But we have the same thing. Everything we do in open source, it's actually in an API. So this is our API OpenSauced.pizza. And if I do anything that's new, so I don't have this in the UI, so I'm going to just quickly run this in my Swagger. But this will be any project that's less than 30 days old that has a huge trend. So obviously Cornet's up there, Tiny GPU. Now DrawDB is actually interesting because I don't know what that is. But the idea there is like, this project probably could use your attention and help. But most people won't even be aware of this until it shows up on Hacker News.
Yeah.
So simple, intuitive design tool for SQL generation.
Nice.
So, and I think for even Open Source Friday, like this is something I wish we had when we first started the stream. Mind you, folks, I used to work at GitHub and I helped start this stream. Like discovering projects to come on stream, like that's what this API endpoint is like brand new projects come talk to us because there's stuff that we can talk about. Obviously, Llama 3, we all know Meta is doing stuff, but once you start going down to like some of the lower, there's actually more Facebook stuff. So apparently Facebook and Apple are doing a ton of stuff that's gathering a ton of attention. But so if you're looking for up and coming stuff that needs extra help, stuff that needs documentation, clone DrawDB, see if you can run it locally. And if you can't, open up issue and see if you can start working on that.
Nice. That is a really useful tool that OpenSauced to use to like discover those tools, and even going to your Swagger docs and saying, okay, what are these new projects that I can probably dig into to contribute to or to showcase on my end, to get them some contributors to their project. I love it. I really like the work that you're doing at OpenSauced. I love the projects of OpenSauced. I saw somebody say, Clint again said, for what it's worth, I personally think it'd be incredibly useful to be able to annotate those peaks in the star search. Understanding what events trigger additional reach is interesting. Definitely interesting stuff happening at OpenSauced, Clint. I do agree. Any more questions? Let me see. They love the actionable advice. Yep. I'm checking out DrawDB right now. I know, like I have DrawDB pulled up. It looks pretty cool. It's a way to, I guess, like draw out your databases before you actually implement them. I think that's actually really great to like, have those notes down so it's easier to code it up when you're ready. Okay, so somebody came in with
yeah,
another view.
I agree with this, and Jan, I appreciate you push back because I think Jan's correct. Like you should use DrawDB first. You should not try to make a contribution. So when I mentioned first was like clone it and then try to run it. That's the effort of trying to use the thing, because like what we have a lot of it's like drive-by contributions where folks, they want to make a contribution. They see a project that's either up and coming or saw on a stream, but the best contribution is really like use the thing and provide feedback. Because I think a lot of maintainers, what they struggle with is they don't get feedback, and usually you get a lot more complaints instead of actual usage. So I would 100% would love folks to use OpenSauced and give us complaints of like, hey, this page is really slow. Like what's going on here? Or hey, I would love to display context and what I contribute to in a different way. Like that feedback is way more valuable than like, oh yeah, cool project, star. Like stars are great, but like I'd love a comment over a star any day.
A comment over a star. That makes sense, because a comment is actually, it's going to contain like useful information that you can use to build and improve the product. I agree, but sometimes there is a blockage on what project should I even use? You know what I mean? And I still think having that access to those projects is good, because then you can have like a small list of projects that you can be like, okay, I'm going to explore these and see what it's like. And if I like one, I'll try to contribute to it, or like leave a helpful comment. Not like, this doesn't work, it sucks. Nothing like that.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
a helpful comment.
there was a meme recently from the Primogen. He was actually like wild comments on GitHub issues. And sometimes like the open source, it's like it's a thankless job. Like you put something out there, you just want to show off something that was cool that you did. It gets popular. Now you have a bunch of people complaining about like why it doesn't work in their certain situation. But you get very few people like, oh, you know what? It doesn't work for me. Let me go fix it. Or let me go give you some like very distinct feedback. For example, our CLI doesn't work in Windows because we have a homebrew build. We not intentionally, we're on Macs. So we're using Homebrew to build our CLI. So anyone today cannot use our CLI on Windows. Not intentional. It's just like it's an oversight. But like that feedback, it was really, really valuable. Like we're going to get to that eventually. But it's just something that we would have not have known unless someone brought it up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. That's really good. I see a question here about the endpoint that you use to show the up and coming projects. That's a good question because I was just looking for it for myself to share, but
Oh
there's
yeah, yeah.
so many endpoints.
Yeah, we went all crazy on the API. Fun fact, we I don't have a there we go. Let me drop in chat for you
Yes.
because I'm not authenticated into StreamYard. But yeah, so this is, you can also go to API to OpenSauced.pizza. Every Swagger endpoint, some of it requires authentication. If you like manipulated data, like Star Search requires authentication. Technically, you could test out Star Search on the API if you wanted to. It's actually exposed. It's the UI that's actually feature flagged. But what I'm getting at is the, and I probably shouldn't have said it out loud. So
I know.
so much for security. But what I'm getting at is like we went API first. Like our API is built in Nest.js. It's all TypeScript. OpenSauced/API is the repo. If anybody has questions, thoughts, features, open an issue, like we do respond. We do have a small team that is working on open source full time. And we're really trying to build something that's useful for a broader reach of the community.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like for someone who wants to contribute to open source, right? What advice would you give them? Or like, are there any specific areas that you need more help with or anything of the sort?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, feedback on user testing. So I forgot the name already, but someone's asking about like how we're doing and then testing.
Yeah,
QA.
I saw that too.
Like today, it's mostly manual. Like folks are logging in, they're finding bugs, they're reporting it, and that goes such a long way because like I can't recreate, like I can't think to recreate a slower internet speed in a situation. So like waiting for, and the problem of our Explore page is we were actually running 20 different queries on multiple organizations and repos and users. We're fixing that. It's like not the best written code, but we're fixing that. But that's stuff that it comes up and folks report that either in Discord or in an issue. So like that is like way more valuable than trying to do a good first issue, which we don't have a ton of those because we do have an active like 2,600 folks in a Discord. So every time a good first issue is labeled, it goes to the Discord and someone picks it up pretty quickly. So the thought there is like, I have this like analogy about like, I played football in high school. And I was one of many football like wide receivers on the team. So which meaning like not everyone gets playing time. And the way you get playing time is you stand next to the coach. And when the coach needs to run a play in, he grabs a receiver and then they run in and say, hey, okay, we're running this play. So if you want playing time, you kind of have to hang out in the community. You have to hang out and you have to use the product and you got to use the project or whatever. So my pitch to anybody who wants to make contributions, like hang out with us. Like see what we're working on, see our announcements, see when we have a change log, and try things out and just like let us know when something's broken and like we'll show you how to fix it. Like if we don't have the bandwidth.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So the best advice is to join their Discord, you know, go to their website. Here is the website for OpenSauced. Check out all the links and join the Discord, follow them on social and stay in touch and be a part of the community and go on their GitHub and try the product and leave helpful comments on the product is what I'm hearing. So my last question for you today, and then we will wrap up, is if OpenSauced was a superhero, what do you think its superpowers would be?
Wow, that is interesting. That's a tricky one, man. I'd guess teleportation. Like I'm thinking I was watching X-Men 97 and like one of the recent episodes Nightcrawler came in. So I'm a big X-Men person. So like apologies everyone if you're not into it, but definitely watch this Disney streaming. But yeah, being able to like navigate through walls would be an amazing like feature skill that OpenSauced would have. And I say that because like we're able to time travel too, that'd be a great one. But like what we want OpenSauced to be is not a JavaScript tool and not for the React ecosystem, not just for Python. But we want to have like a standard for everyone. And I'm not sure if my camera just like completely died. Oh, there we are. But yeah, so like we want to build a standard for all of open source, which is actually very hard because everyone's got a different secret sauce on how to maintain and manage metrics in their open source projects. So
Yeah.
teleportation through walls, that would be it, because we want to go from repo to repo.
Nice, nice. I mean, it's very applicable, right? Teleportation would be like a really cool superhero power. I would love to be able to teleport as well, because then I could just go wherever I want. And maybe not even just teleport, but like split myself in two or like 3 or 4. So it could be multiple places at the same time. But thank you so much, Brian, for coming on today and showing us all the amazing things that OpenSauced is doing and how much it's grown. Wow, the product has grown so much.
Yeah, lots happening.
And is evolving to be like this amazing tool for the open sourceness of open source is what I'm going to call it, right? But yeah, thanks for coming on today. Thanks for joining, everyone. This has been a really good conversation. Thanks for all your questions and answers that we provided. And until next week, bye.